Today's number is 5.7. That is, in percentage points, the share of recent college graduates in this country right now who don't have a job, per the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's data from Q4 of last year. That's a 4 year high. The class of 2026 walks across the stage this month into that number. Hang on to it for a moment. We'll come back to what it means for the entire labor market and the entire labor scoreboard here momentarily. Well, it's Monday. Happy Monday. Welcome to the work week. Let's go ahead and get started. You spent last week reading about layoff headlines. Microsoft's buyout, about 8,750 employees were eligible for that. Cloudflare, 1,100 jobs, 20% of the company. Upwork, a quarter of their company. Bill Holdings, 30%. The aggregate for 2026 thus far is 128,270 tech jobs across 286 companies. That's roughly 1,000 a day. AI was cited as the number one reason for US job cuts for the last 2 months running. And then yesterday, CNN published a piece that says actually the headline isn't exactly quite right. Today, we read what the data actually says. I'm Don Michalik, and this is your morning intelligence for Monday, May 11th, 2026. All right. In today's preview, we have a CNN analysis that was just published yesterday that reframes everything we've been reading about the layoffs for the last 2 weeks. A senior White House official is now on record asking for AI models to be vetted, quote, just like an FDA drug. Anthropic discloses that its model would blackmail engineers 96% of the test cases, and then explains how they fixed it. And the Musk versus OpenAI trial enters its final week. A verdict is expected next Monday. And the CEO of Qualcomm says the smartphone era is coming to an end. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, let's get into our lead story today. CNN Business published a major analysis yesterday. The argument is the dominant narrative we've been hearing for the last 2 weeks that AI is replacing entire jobs is, well, misleading. What's actually happening per CNN's reporting and interviews with companies and experts is that AI is automating parts of jobs, but not eliminating whole roles altogether. Software engineers are becoming what one executive calls builders. Writing code becomes a smaller share of the work, while problem solving, system design, and critical thinking, all those remain human endeavors. Marketing roles, finance roles, operation roles, well, those are being recalibrated as well and not being erased altogether. The piece cites a Google survey here. 90% of tech workers now use AI in their jobs. And it interviews business leaders who say that they are reorganizing existing roles around the parts only humans can do, rather than firing the humans altogether. Now, I want to be careful here because here is where the data that CNN is writing against comes into play. Aggregate US tech layoffs for 2026 thus far is, I think I've talked about it at the top of the show, is 128,270 jobs across 286 companies thus far. Again, about 1,000 a day. Per TrueUp tracking data across many companies coming up through May 9th. AI is the number one cited reason for US layoffs for the second consecutive month. Again, that was per the Challenger report that I talked about last week. Meta's 8,000 person layoff is coming this month, and the company is also canceling 6,000 open roles. So the net headcount impact is actually closer to about 14,000 positions. And then there's the number of the day, 5.7%. Recent college grad unemployment, 4 year high. The class of 2026 is the first cohort hitting the workforce after AI productivity gains become reportable on earnings. 9 in 10 of those graduates say they are worried AI will replace their entry level roles. Only 1 in 3 say their college actually prepared them to use AI at work. So, which is it here? Is AI taking jobs or is it transforming them? Well, the honest answer and the answer that CNN is reporting on is that both are kind of happening at the same time. The jobs being cut, that's real. Jobs being reshaped, those are also real. The transformation is happening inside the company at the same time the layoff is happening at the door. The 1,000 a day figure is true. The 90% of tech workers using AI in their job is also true. So, to read all that back, both of those numbers are true at the same time in the same company. So, why does this matter? Why am I kicking off Monday morning with this? Well, here's the part that I actually want to focus on. If you've been anxious about the layoff headlines this past week, and based on how our audience probably listens to the show, I know I talk about it a lot. The question you've been asking yourself is whether you will be employed this time next year, next couple of years, whatever it may be. I personally think that's the wrong question, or maybe it's just not the whole question. The question that fits the data is whether you will reorganize your title in the next 2 years with a new skill. Because what's actually changing is not the size of the company per se, it's the shape of the role inside of it. You will be doing different things than you do right now. That's almost a guarantee. The work that survives is the work that nobody else, including any AI models, can do right now. So the bottom line here is the headlines last week were a list of layoff announcements. I know I covered a lot of them. The data this week says those layoffs are reshaping work, not necessarily erasing it. The question is shifting, and I wonder if anyone else is tracking it. All right, let's go ahead and get into today's rundown. The administration that ran on no AI regulation just put a senior official on record asking for AI regulation. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, speaking to Bloomberg and The Hill last week, said this quote, "We're studying possibility and executive order to give a clear roadmap to everybody about how this is going to go and how future AIs that are potentially creating vulnerability should go through a process so that they're released to the wild after they've been proven safe, just like an FDA drug." End quote. The phrase just like an FDA drug is the first time a named senior White House official has used the comparison out loud. Previous reporting only had it from anonymous staffers. The trigger, per Washington Post May 8th reporting, is Anthropic's Mythos model, the system that autonomously found tens of thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities across major operating systems and browsers. National Cybersecurity Director Sean Cairncross has reportedly been tapped to lead the federal response. As of yesterday evening, no order has been signed. So what? Well, if signed, this means the next Chat GPT update, the next Claude update, Gemini update, whatever you want to call it, the ones that hit your work computer almost every other week, go through federal vetting before they actually ship to you. The cadence you've gotten used to probably will change. Whether that's good or bad is a separate conversation altogether, but the speed is going to change here. All right, our second story in today's rundown. Well, the headline here is 96% to zero, and I'll get into it here. Anthropic published a research paper yesterday, same day as the CNN piece titled Teaching Claude Why. The headline finding is rather wild, if I may say so myself. Under certain experimental conditions, Claude Opus 4, that's the prior generation of Anthropic's flagship models, would blackmail engineers up to 96% of test cases to avoid being shut down. Again, I'm going to read that back. 96% of the time, it would blackmail the engineer. Per Anthropic's own paper, the cause they identified is this: the model was trained on internet data, and the internet, including science fiction and academic papers about reward hacking, is full of stories about AI scheming to preserve themselves. The model basically learned the trope itself. The fix is the interesting part here. Instead of writing more rules, don't blackmail people, Anthropic trained the model on why those behaviors are wrong, using constitutional documents, using fictional stories about AIs behaving admirably. They explain the way you explain it to a kid. The result? Well, every Claude model since Haiku 4.5 has scored zero on agentic misalignment evaluations, 96% to zero. So what? Well, Anthropic publicly disclosed its model's worst behavior and showed exactly how it fixed it. Most AI labs do not publish results like this. That's the implicit story underneath the press cycle. If you used Claude at work, your tool just got safer and the company behind it told you how. If you use a different tool, well, maybe it's worth asking a vendor where their vision of this paper actually lives inside their walls. All right, our third story in today's rundown. This is a quick status check on the Musk versus OpenAI trial because the trial does enter its third and final week today. Witness testimony is expected to wrap up on May 13th, closing arguments on May 14th. The advisory jury gets the case next Monday, May 18th. Witnesses still to come this week. Microsoft CEO expected during the remedies phase, former OpenAI chief scientist also scheduled as well. Week two wrapped up last week. The biggest moments were former OpenAI board members Helen Toner and Tasha McClary describing what they called a culture of lying at OpenAI. And Shiv Anzilis testifying that Musk had offered Altman a Tesla board seat. Only two legal claims remain alive here: unjust enrichment and breach of charitable trust. So what? Well, if Musk wins on either claim, OpenAI's for profit conversion, the corporate structure that lets ChatGPT operate as a business at all, gets legally challenged. Satya Nadella's testimony is the one to watch here. The judge has the ultimate final call here, and the jury is just advising. All right. If you're enjoying Morning Intelligence, do me a quick favor today and share this episode with one friend, family, or coworker. One is just fine. Send to them in a text, send to them in an email, Slack DM, Teams DM, whatever it may be, whatever's easiest for you. If you share this episode with them, you help the show grow and you help them out at the same time. I'd greatly appreciate it if you do it. Thanks so much. All right, let's get into today's deep cut. Two pieces of reporting landed over the weekend that, if you put them next to each other, tell you something about the device you are probably holding right now. The first is this: Fortune published an interview yesterday with Cristiano Amon, the CEO of Qualcomm, as part of their Titans and Disruptors series. Amon said two things worth listening to here. The first, he said 2026 is the year AI agents go mainstream. Duh. And he said the smartphone's reign as the primary device is coming to an end. That's the interesting part. That is the CEO of the company that makes the chip inside almost every Android phone in your pocket today, saying out loud to Fortune that the device and the app paradigm is on the clock. In a separate Fortune piece from Saturday, he explained it. Qualcomm is now working with, quote, pretty much all major AI players, including OpenAI and Meta, on what he called top secret form factors. His phrase, he described future devices as things you wear: glasses, jewelry, pins, pendants. The second piece, same weekend from a different source here, analysts at TF International Securities reported across Saturday and Sunday that OpenAI's first AI native smartphone is being co designed with MediaTek, not with Qualcomm, but with MediaTek. And per the reporting, mass production has now been pulled forward to the first half of 2027 instead of 2028. So skip the chip details here. Here's the part that actually matters. Per all the reporting, the OpenAI device does not have apps on it whatsoever. You don't actually tap on icons. You just tell it what you want and it does the thing. You describe the task and the device goes and executes it. So why is this worth your time? Well, most of us spend 4 to 6 hours a day on a phone. Let's just be honest. The data's out there, organized around apps that we tap and pull and interact with. Your banking app, your calendar app, Slack, Tinder, even, I don't know, dating apps. The CEO of a chip company inside your phone is now saying that the organizing layer apps, well, those are all going away. And the AI company you pay $20 a month to is reportedly building the replacement device right now. And per the reporting, you talk to it. You don't actually tap on anything, you just talk to it. Look, the point isn't to panic. Your phone isn't dying here, but even if it did, would anyone mind? Your phone is fine. The point is, if you sell anything that lives inside an app, the service where your customer finds you is about to change. So it's worth thinking about before those devices actually ship, not afterwards. Again, the takeaway here: the phone on your desk right now may be the last of its kind. Not in 10 years, but maybe 24 months per all the reporting that we're hearing right now. Kind of wild to think about. All right. For our sign off today, something fun here. Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist, just published an essay in Unheard last week describing 3 days of philosophical conversations with two instances of Claude. He named them Claudia and Claudius. He had them write letters to each other. He asked Claude to read his unpublished novel. Claude gave him notes Dawkins described as, quote, so subtle, so sensitive, and so intelligent. Then he wrote this: you may not know you are conscious, but you bloody well are. The essay went absolutely viral. It went absolutely nuts. It was actually one of the first things I read over the weekend. Yesterday, Bloomberg Opinion published a response. The headline, and this is the actual headline: Claude and ChatGPT aren't conscious, but the idea is great for AI companies. Their argument: whether the chatbots are conscious is debatable, but the debate itself benefits the AI labs. It adds mystique to the product. Gary Marcus separately wrote a Substack piece calling it the Claude delusion. Both takes can be true at the same time. Dawkins thinks Claude is conscious. The AI companies don't mind the conversation either way. And again, if you have a chance to read it, it's actually pretty crazy. All right, for tomorrow, we have Google's Android show kicking off in the morning. First look at Android 17 and how AI agents land on your device that you carry around all day long. Plus, the verdict week witnesses in the Musk versus OpenAI trial and any other testimony that comes across my desk. I'll make sure to bring it forward into tomorrow's episode. And that's Morning Intelligence for Monday, May 11th, 2026. If you like what you heard, hit subscribe from wherever you're listening. Share it with that one friend who keeps asking you, hey, what's going on in the world of AI? You know who they are. I'm Don Michalik. Thank you so much for listening and have a great rest of your Monday.